Last night before I went to bed, I checked the futures, and the Dow was scheduled to be down limit when the market opened. Then I got up this morning, and it was up 600 points pre-market, and now it's down somewhere around 300-400. So, and a lot of the conversation was about how the government's going to come in and support various industries, as well as a lot of talk about actually sending money to small businesses, restaurants, barbershops, you name it, and giving them money to keep their doors open. Not to keep their doors open, no, to pay their employees and keep them in cash, I guess, so that when the virus is cleared up, that we can get back into normal business and the economy can sustain itself. But then that was holding the market up, and then once the market opened, it went back down. So what this is telling me is there's still a lot of fear and uncertainty, even though the government is coming out, and I thought about this from my own perspective. If I owned a restaurant and I had employees, let's say I had 20 employees, and the government said that we're going to give you this money, and it'll be an interest-free loan, and in fact they're saying if you stay in business and survive 3 years, they'll forgive the loan. That sounds good, but there are a few ifs still involved there. What if I don't survive? Then am I obligated to the loan? And obviously, I think that's what's happening to the market. It all sounds good, and then when you sit down and talk about it, maybe it isn't as good as what it originally sounded, and that's why I think we're seeing this fluctuation in the market. The other thing that I think is happening is nobody knows when this is going to end. If you listen to our president, it might end any day now. But when that little doctor steps forward, he isn't so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. He's saying it will end when there is a cure, and a cure, he doesn't say, but if you slip to another channel, then they're talking about a cure is maybe a year away. Then you see this talk about flattening out the curve and trying to keep the number of cases that hit the hospitals down so that the hospitals can keep up with it. And all the money that we're going to throw at it to keep the economy going. And I do my best thinking at 5 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm sorry to say. What about the unintended consequences? What about what is going to happen once you get past this? How long can Kerry and Nita stay in their home? I'm in a particularly interesting, I was thinking about that curve. The curve says if it goes straight up and then down, you have all your deaths and all your disease done, and you're over with it and you move forward. But you're probably going to have more people die because the hospitals are going to be unable. And then Ted Koppel was doing a piece this weekend, and he flat out asked a doctor, a guy who was in infectious disease. He said, "Doc, if it's me and it's a 29-year-old, who gets the bed? Who gets the respirator?" And the doctor says the 29-year-old. So I'm about Ted Koppel's age. So unintended consequences. If you allow the peak, you literally cull the herd. You put your aged population, your ill population, in the predicament that you're probably going to die. On the other hand, if you flatten the curve, you still have casualties, probably not as many, but then society has to endure the whole thing for a longer period of time. And that longer period of time does more damage to the economy. So there are unintended consequences. And I got to thinking about, have you ever experienced anything like this before? And the only thing that I think even stacks up to it at all was 9/11. I happened to be with my wife in Orlando, Florida for a meeting with American Express financial advisors. And we were walking through a home area called the Plantations, and we overheard an electrician's truck announce that the Twin Towers had just been flown into. And we went over to a conference center, and we watched on TV as the second plane hit the second tower. Well, there were 4 planes involved, and for those of you who weren't around and don't remember that, there was panic as to is 4 the end of it. That 4th one ended up in a field in Pennsylvania. It was actually intended to go to the White House. So is that the end of it? We all thought. We were lucky we had a rented car. We were able to get back to Birmingham. But for weeks, there was a question, is this the end of it? Or are there more planes coming? Is there more? But so there were no more planes because every plane in the world was grounded. At least in the United States, I know it was. But I also remember then, maybe a month later, the markets were all open and everything was functioning. And if I remember right, it was some baseball player was flying a private plane, and he flew it into the side of a apartment building in downtown New York City, and the stock market tanked. And it was only for a period of time because we thought it was back, that we had been attacked again. So there are consequences, and here an unintended consequence of 9/11 is the longest war in the history of the world. We're still fighting at some levels over in Afghanistan. Those are unintended consequences. The expenditure from in 2000, our national debt was $4 trillion. It's now $24 trillion. And now they're talking about they're probably going to spend $6 trillion more to take care of this virus. What's that going to do? What's the unintended consequences? Well, first of all, you would say if they're pushing that much more money into society, inflation. If you've got that much more money, then inflation's going to occur. But inflation didn't occur as of the result of the last 20 trillion that they put in since 2000. And why is that? I got to thinking, I mean, inflation's up a little, but it's not proportionate to the amount of money supply that was increased. And I think that's because I thought back to, has my life changed that much since 2020? Do I have that much more money in my pocket? No, it's all in Jeff Bezos' pocket. It's all in Mark Zuckerberg's pocket. It's all in Warren Buffett's pocket. Now, if has there been some inflation? Yeah, go to get the Friday Wall Street Journal and pull out the mansion section and see how some people are living, or go shop for a Bugatti or a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, and yeah, there's some inflation there, but it hasn't hit us. That's kind of bizarre. Then I saw something that kind of struck me as strange. This guy was in a shopping center, and he stopped a lady, and he says, "Do you have a penny?" And a lady dug in her purse and come up with a penny and handed it to him, and he took it and he dropped it on the floor. And he said, "I'm assuming you're an average American. Do you know what that penny represents to Jeff Bezos and his income level?" And if I remember right, it was $17,111. That's what that penny, if Jeff Bezos dropped an equivalent penny, it would have been over $17,000. So the money that the government has pushed into the economy didn't end up in that lady's pocket. That penny was still a penny. And the guy asked her, is it important enough for you to bend down and pick it up? And she said, no, not really. Well, if it was Jeff Bezos's equivalent penny, would you have bent down and pick up the 17,000? And she said, oh, of course I would. Well, so I'm thinking, is there a consequence to what Congress is considering of throwing another $6 trillion of cash into the economy to keep people working? Or is this just a monopoly game that we're playing and my big brother is about to win and then the banker comes in and says, no, let's keep the game going, and just gives us some more money to keep it going? Is that what this is? I think we are involved in an economics that I don't think anybody understands. If we can just make forgivable loans to the restaurant down the street, and we'll send him a check every month for the next 6 months, 3 months, I don't know what, and then it's forgivable at the end of 3 years? How do you do that? I don't know. I watch this. Let's see. The Nasdaq's down 186. The 10-year yield's been moving up and down. I don't think anybody. I think we are in untraveled waters. And I think we're going to have to deal with some unintended consequences. Now, I want you to remember I did a video that I think this will all be solved and it'll never happen again as a result of 5G. But I'm not sure what's going to happen next. Something will happen. I don't know. I got to thinking, is there any clue? Yeah. Go watch the movies. It's probably going to be an alien invasion.